What's up, everybody, and welcome to Theory Underground. I'm its host and creator, David McKerracher. This video you're about to see technically has already existed online, but it was in like a 6-hour stream, and so I am republishing it as a standalone interview. This is the first time that Slavoj Žižek collaborated with us via Zoom. Before that, he had submitted a piece to Underground Theory, which was just an amazing thing. And this video you're about to see is from the launch event for the Theory Underground book tour in 2023, which I did with a couple of my compatriots across the United States. We went to like 17 different cities and talked about this book, sometimes to empty venues, other times to, groups of like 30 people. And so it was very like DIY underground shit, as is everything going on here. Been up until now. It was for these two books, the book tour, Underground Theory coming to a city near you. Stick around to the end of the video if you want to hear about how we're coming to a city near you if you are in Europe during the month of May 2024. And then my book, Timenergy, Why You Have No Time or Energy. And as you can see here, Slavoj Žižek wrote a foreword for this book for the second edition. But during the tour, actually, we were still on the first edition. Slavoj had not yet written this foreword, which came about because of things that he said during the following interview with him. Not this interview, but the following interview. This interview is where he first found out about Nick Land, my compatriot Michael Downs, who's interviewing Slavoj with me. Actually, he led the charge on most of the questions here, and he was really excited to ask Slavoj about Nick Land. And so, as some of you might know already, Slavoj has agreed to debate Nick Land, but that's not in this video. This video is the first time he had ever heard about Nick Land. The second interview that we have with him is where he actually agrees to debate Nick Land. Now, whether that's ever going to actually happen or not kind of depends on whether Nick actually gets back to me or not. Like, he said that he was going to get back to me after he got back from vacation, but that was like 2 months ago. I know he's back from vacation. He just hasn't responded. So we'll see. We're hoping to see it happen, but also who knows, right? And with that, I'm about to play the interview for you all, but I just want to finish off by saying, if you are interested in getting involved at Theory Underground, if you're interested in becoming a subscriber or a patron, or if you're interested in knowing what the difference between those two things are, if you're interested in taking some of the lecture courses, because Theory Underground is a lecture course centered platform as well as a publishing house, stick around till the end of the video. I really look forward to telling you about all of that stuff, as well as how I was able to quit my job at Amazon. Yeah, I'm still wearing the hoodie that I got at Amazon. But no, I was able to quit and do Theory Underground full time. So stick around to the end of the video if you want to hear about that. Thanks.
How is it? I got the message. You begin, an idiot, I include myself, introduces me, gives the word to another idiot who asks questions, blah, blah, blah. I get all that. And the public is, did I get it concretely? People who are well disposed towards theory, but maybe not fully professionally acquainted with high-level philosophical speculation. So I can talk to about serious stuff, but not too technically. Am I correct?
Sure, but with us too, like, we don't want you. We know normally you're always trying to be as clear for the general public, but when it comes to the theoretical questions we have, so many of us are students of you. We've read so many of your books. We're well versed in Lacanian Hegelian theory.
I got it.
And so you don't have to hold back if you want to,
I got it. I got it. Yeah. Because I have many problems now, stances which may appear politically incorrect, but I really think one should take them into account. There are now, incidentally, some new stuff leftist against political correctness and wokeness, but I don't totally trust it. It's too standard liberal. Did you hear about this German-speaking philosopher of ethics, Jürgen Neumann? He now published a book recently with an open title, Why Woke is Not Left, or something like that. Basically, I agree, but her point against wokeness is simple liberal universalism, like particular identities, no, we need universal human rights, blah, blah, blah. Oh, it's not as simple as that, because we, as at least indebted to Marx, have to be very careful here. There is also this kind of, how should I put it, concrete universality, in the sense of every universality would be questioned with regard to its particular biases and so on. And she is just doing a useful job, but may I put it in Stalinist terms? She is, this will be so evil, I hope she will not listen to it. She is more or less a useful idiot or a good fellow traveler, which means we need her now, but at a later stage, one never knows, she will have to be perched, but okay. Thanks very much. Do you have any messages of what I should be attentive to now in advance?
Well, I mean, basically, I'm the idiot who's going to introduce you, and so after I introduce you,
who is the mega idiot? Okay, the mega idiot, it's me. But who is the idiot who asks the question?
Well, yeah, we're Žižekians, so you've made us idiots, so it's all your fault.
I will put another term, which I take very seriously. You are not a complete idiot, which I'm also not a complete idiot. I don't think there are only two types of people, complete idiots and not complete idiots. And that's the highest that we can get.
The non-complete idiot.
No, not complete idiots in the sense of not idiots at all. Sorry, I haven't yet encountered this type of human beings,
Yeah, basically what I'm going to do, I'm going to give a brief introduction, and then we want you to elaborate. We want you to have time to do that. But we do each have, I don't know, 2-3 main questions we want to get to, and just let you riff
just
off.
To warn you, I'm in a bad mood, blah blah. Not because of you. Here it was a heat wave, flooding. It's this strange weather when from a heat wave you pass all of a sudden to cold weather. So I'm all the time with some kind of allergies. So again, the point is, do whatever you wanted me. Cut it short. I've said that you don't have somebody to imitate my voice, so that you could even simply.
Can we just use ChatGPT to have it talk?
Another guy to say what I am not aware, but I really want to say, according to your judgment.
Yeah.
Everything.
Dave, you want to
all
say
right, I want to see if this. Can you all hear me okay on this computer?
Yes,
I do. I see you and I hear you.
All right, everybody. Slavoj, it's so good to have you here with us. Thank you so much for joining.
Thank you, Slavoj.
I'm grateful to you. I appreciate very much what you are doing. Yeah.
Thank you, Slavoj. So everybody, welcome to the official books and tour launch for Theory Underground. I'm holding up the books, but I guess they kind of got the computer's making them not show up. But anyway, we've got the Timenergy book and the Underground Theory book. Both of them are now available as of today on Amazon. And today is the day that we begin the tour across the United States and back again. And then we'll go into Europe in April of next year. We're kind of planning that one out a little bit more ahead of time. But this tour, basically, it's our first real foray into the world. And Slavoj came just to sort of give us that boost and to say, good luck on your travels. And so thank you. It means the world. And Mikey and I we kind of have you for an hour. We just have some questions we've always wanted to ask you. And so
sorry to interrupt you, but I hope we agree that if I don't collapse, 1 hour is for us Marxists a dialectical notion, not a mechanical materialist notion. Like
this is not
the lesson for quantum physics. You can stretch the time and so on.
This is not fixed time. This is variable time, right? Traditional time, right? It's the time of symbolic exchange. So, okay, so everybody, welcome. I'm a little frazzled. I'm not going to say very much about Theory Underground or the books themselves because we have speakers who will talk about that after this interview. But I will just say that the Theory Underground is a platform. It's a teaching platform. It's a social media site. There's an app for it. It's also a publishing house. And when Slavoj found out that it's a publishing house, he said, well, I'll give you a manuscript then. And so he gifted that to me. And I said, okay, well, then it would be unfair of me not to open this up to some others. And so other people who've been with Theory Underground in the courses, who wrote really good papers for some of the courses, they get an opportunity to be in the volume. And then also some other colleagues also are in the volume, and some of the names in the volume created a lot of backlash. Some people were not very happy, apparently, about some of the people, including Slavoj. And he's been canceled a few times this year. And so we've come to his defense for at least a couple of things, maybe not everything, but I'm just kidding. But I don't know. I think that all I really need to say about Theory Underground is wait for Nance and Anne after this. They will both explain what the books are, explain what the tour is. But for right now, Michael Downs is somebody that I've been in dialogue with for 10 years. He's a warehouse worker in Raytown, Missouri. He's probably the most enthusiastic supporter of Slavoj Žižek that I've ever known. He teaches Slavoj better than anyone else I've ever heard. I've learned a lot about Slavoj and Lacan through Mikey. Mikey taught.
So maybe I should call him if I don't understand something from my old books.
You should.
Yeah, I'll explain inherent transgression to you.
You definitely should. Yeah. And so basically what I thought it would be cool is because a lot of people are hearing from Mikey about Žižek for the first time today. I just wanted to give Mikey an opportunity to talk about why he cares about the theory of Slavoj Žižek. So Mikey, go ahead and take it away. You can introduce Slavoj.
Okay, yeah. I mean, there's somebody in philosophy who needs no introduction. It's Slavoj Žižek. But I think a lot of the time, who he is in the world of philosophy gets obfuscated by his media image. And for us, most importantly, Slavoj Žižek is the guy who wrote Sublime Objective Ideology, Tearing with the Negative, For They Know Not What They Do, Ticklish Subject, Parallax View, Less Than Nothing. Slavoj, for us, is a serious philosopher working at the highest levels of the German idealist tradition, mixing it with Lacanian psychoanalysis. And so for those of us who are in underground theory and big into philosophy online, he's primarily a serious philosopher. And I think that gets lost a lot of the time because he is so entertaining. He has so many great examples from pop culture. But we've seen how the media wants to turn him into the Elvis of cultural theory or a philosophical clown. And that's not who he is for us. He's on that level of Hegel, Kant, Schelling, and Freud, Lacan. And so that's how we engage with Slavoj's work, is as a serious theoretical position. And for us, it's primarily two things. It's how Slavoj has taken Lacanian theory and Hegelian ontology and worked at it book after book after book, refining this philosophical paradigm, this philosophical view. And that is, without a shadow of doubt, Slavoj's longest lasting impact on the history of philosophy is going to be how he read Hegel through Lacan and read Lacan through Hegel. And it's very easy whenever you see somebody talking Lacan and Hegel to act like it's just Lacan or it's just Hegel. No, Slavoj did that. He made that connection. And that's where his lasting contribution is going to be, is in this ontology of exigency, this ontology of dialectical contradiction. And that's where we primarily focus. And I mean, the second thing, of course, is the theory of ideology, which has been so influential on me and on us because the problem with traditional ideology is that it always situated the problem at the level of ideas or representations or meaning. And what Slavoj figured out using Lacan is like, no, there's this facet of enjoyment, this thing with jouissance that keeps us locked into certain ideological formations. It's the glue that keeps us hooked on ideology. And you have to get beyond thinking about ideology as just merely false consciousness or deceptive representation, and understand it as a libidinal effect. And that's where it's been so influential on me. And just on a personal note, that's why he matters theoretically. But I want to say why he matters to me personally is during the pandemic, my mom, she had owned a small business since I was a kid. And the reason I had a lot of time and energy to work on philosophy is because I helped at the family business. During the pandemic, the business closed, it shut down, we lost it. And I had to figure out how to go into typical wage labor. And I got a job as a bouncer working at a barcade. And
are you strong enough to do it? I would be afraid to do this.
It's terrible. Like, I absolutely hate wage labor. It's the worst thing in the world to me.
No, sorry. I was more concrete. I thought about bouncing. This means you were throwing out or supposed to throw out.
Yeah, we got to break up fights. Yeah, or make sure that we diffuse fights or whatever. But here's the funny thing, Slavoj. I think so. Our mutual friend Todd McGowan. Todd's basically like my teacher in all things Lacan, Žižek, Hegel. Mm-hmm. And Todd means the world to me. But I told him about this, and he might have told you at some point. But so my form of inherent transgression at my job as a bouncer is, so they were real strict on us carding everybody who comes in. And I got tired of it. It was so boring just to sit there for 8 hours doing it. What I would end up doing is I would just start reading your books on my phone and throughout my whole shift. So I would read Parallax View or Sublime Object or whatever over and over and just kind of bullshit, act like I'm carding. But I had more important things to do, which was read your books. But seriously, on a personal level, reading your main theoretical works is what got me through this incredibly rough patch of my life. And so, on the one hand, it was, a kind of therapy in a sense. It got me through my hard times, but on the other, it was my form of inherent transgression where I'm like, I hate this fucking job. So you know what? I'm gonna read Slavoj all night and pass the time that way. And so that's really where my understanding of you came from, was through reading your books being my form of inherent transgression at my shitty job. And so that's just, again, it was just, it was really important for me. It really got me through. But the last thing I'll just say, so I came up with a joke for you. I know how much you love jokes. Jokes are so central to your work, but it is
politically incorrect, but this is very difficult to do. Politically incorrect, vulgar, but in a sense that they are not really anti-feminist, blah, blah, Yeah. The problem is to be apparently vulgar, but with a much more ambiguous, finer method. So please do it.
Okay, well, I not to disappoint. This isn't really a political joke. It's more of just those of us who are in the world of Žižekian theory, right? So there's a funny thing that you did in a couple of your books where you spelled Todd's last name with an extra A. You turned it into McGowan instead of McGowan. And I was joking with Todd about it. So here's the little joke. Why does Slavoj Žižek purposely misspell Todd McGowan's last name as McGowan? Because Žižek really has a thing for that little A.
That's politically correct, perfectly done. I agree that I insert the small A. No.
Exactly. So,
although, you know why I also admire Todd? Not because I always agree with him, but precisely because I don't always agree with him. And that's what I also expect from you. With all my inner circle friends, for example, here in Slovenia, Alenka Zupancic, Mladen Dolar, and so on, we are best friends personally, but whoever reads us closely will soon notice that in a very noble, gentle way, there is a deep polemics between the three of us going on all the time. For example, the last book which really hit me as a kind of epiphany, Alenka's Antigone's Parallax. Let's cut the bullshit. This book is a friendly, polemical reply to my reading of Antigone. He takes into account my three versions and adds a fourth version. And the reason that's the highest sign of friendship that I can express, the reason I really hate her is that she instantly convinced me. The way she reads Antigone, which is precisely the anti-liberal Judith Butler way. You know, the standard reading is that for Antigone, Polyneikos stands for all those excluded, trans, gay, whatever. This is for me just radicalized liberalism. You know, this typical liberal worry, but it's our liberal notion of universal right, really only all inclusive, blah, blah, blah. But again, that's not, she converted me, that's not what Antigone does. What she does is the exact opposite. You remember those famous lines, which are the key, although I also quote them, but she gives the full reading, where she says, if it were for my sons, for my husband, blah, 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 let them rot. I wouldn't care. It's only because for my brother that I'm doing this. And then in a wonderful way, another secret of her reading, one would have expected a vulgar psychoanalytic reading. Yeah, of course, incest, sister, brother. No, she doesn't go into this. But she does talk about incest, but in a much more refined way, in the sense that, I shouldn't lose too much time, but that the topic of incest, it's not simply, ultimately, it's not at all about having sex with your parents or brothers or sisters or children or whatever. It's about a certain short circuit, which is a constitutive illusion implied by our language itself. And then she, not to lose time, I'm sorry, links this to the wonderful old saying in my new book. There will be a long chapter on it. You know, this old paradox, which she rehabilitates or reuses, the old joke, explorers come into a tribe and ask them, are there still any cannibals among you? The answer is, no, yesterday we ate the last one. Isn't it, that's my, just to provoke you, isn't something similar going on with cancel culture at its worst? We should use here the Lacanian tension between what Lacan calls enunciated, the topic of what you are talking about, and process of enunciation, what you are doing, what is inscribed into the very mode how you are doing it. That's, for me, the problem of cancel culture. The topic, what they want to assert is diversity and inclusion. But then all they are actually doing is excluding people who don't fit their definition of inclusion. So it's a clear case of how, with their very discursive practice, they exclude more and more people. And for a Hegelian like me, this is an elementary paradox of the tension between universal and particular. That's my problem with cancel culture. What we need today, and here I deeply sympathize with you, is the inclusionary leftist politics. We need popular fronts, how to bring together women, workers, those who fight for the preservation of our environment, and so on and so on. But isn't, if I may put it in this naive way, the spirit of cancel culture precisely the spirit of permanent suspicion and exclusion? And
well, what do you think about how Todd links it to super ego? He thinks like what the left is caught up in is a kind of super egoic morality, that it's so based on bombarding everybody with guilt that it actually undermines what we're doing.
Exactly. And I totally agree what Todd is saying here. And just to, I'm very sorry, I have some kind of allergy. Just to bring it even maybe a step further, I agree with Todd's more general point that the typical right-wing mode of enjoyment is that of exclusion. Mm-hmm. Even in the grand scheme of you exclude Jews or whomever and so on, like in anti-Semitism. And this is for me, sorry, this is for me the problem, how it's complex, more theoretical, but as you told me, I will nonetheless
go ahead, do it. Go for it.
How the logic of exclusion is the very opposite of class struggle. Class struggle does not imply the logic of exclusion. Why not? Because exclusion is always self-affirmative. The problem of the anti-Semites, other racists, is how to preserve our identity. A foreign body is presented as the disturbing factor, so let's exclude them, Jews or other races, and we will assert our identity. While the central point of Marxist notion of class struggle is that what you question, undermine in class struggle is your own fixed identity as it is conferred on you by the existing legal order. Here, although I don't follow them all the way, I agree with those feminists, but I don't want to go into it now, who claim that against this pseudo-hardline feminism, feminism is not about asserting feminine identity and then exclude men or whoever poses a threat to it, but it's this exclusion, of course we have to fight enemies, should be always accompanied by a self-reflexive twist. To what extent is our identity already part of the situation that we are trying to get rid of? I'm coming here back to your sorry, do I talk too much?
No, you're doing really good. I don't want you to say our thing. We have to say it ourselves. Is that we, as
you're getting at something we wanted to ask you about.
As blue collar workers.
Very sorry if I went so
you're
far.
Good. You're good.
Yeah. Okay, listen. I like what you did now. I need to be very brutal. That's why you, Mikey, you are the only one, as far as I can see, properly dressed in black. I need a male or female figure of domina, you know. Domina in the sense of master. Somebody had to whip me and cut me short. So yes, I stopped.
Yeah.
Dave, say what you got, Dave.
So it's something Mikey and I have been talking about a lot because, Theory Underground, it's by and for like blue collar working class people who don't really have upward mobility, blah, blah, blah. When people hear this, they think, oh, okay. It's like, they think in terms of identity politics. So they basically think of in terms of working class identity politics, we're trying to be seen as workers. What you were just getting at is that, no, we're not trying to be seen as workers. As workers, we're saying we advocate for our own self-abolition. We don't want there to be a working class. We don't
want to be wage laborers. We want to destroy this identity. We're trying to free ourselves from this identity.
Right.
Is this a question already, or do you want to finish
Well,
it?
but isn't that get at the heart of what because both you and Todd, you have this thing in common. You're both champions of universalist politics. And so the difference is a real universalist politics is going to have to center the movement around a contradiction, antagonism at the heart of society that all of us are struggling from. You call it an antagonism or contradiction. Todd will call it a lack. But both of you are tapped into this thing where it's like, no, there's a deadlock in society that everybody is struggling from. And if you focus it on one identity or the other, that universal dimension gets lost. And if we're going to change society on a universal scale, we all have to get tapped into this fundamental antagonism or lack that we're all dealing with.
Here, again, a very friendly, I wouldn't say even distance, but shift of accent from Todd.
Okay.
You know, Todd McGowan with an A, you know, my Todd, whom I appreciate very much. You know, my problem with using the term lack as synonymous or in the same line with antagonism and so on is that the basic lesson for me is that lack always appears in the form of excess, surplus. The two are two sides of the same coin, especially apropos of antagonism. Look, this is one of my things, as you challenge me, will go a little bit, get a little bit more complex. All intelligent Marxists are absolutely against these primitive evolutionary notions that we have class antagonism, which is usually blurred by other classes, blah, blah, blah. But then in a revolutionary situation or in the objective tendency, we will have a clear-cut distinction. It's the exploited and the other side. We will get the pure binary opposition. No, we never get that. Antagonism means that precisely the difference is never a clear difference between two opposed poles. And to Marx, this was clear. You don't get Marx used in an ambiguous way here. He can also be criticized. The term of lumpenproletariat. Marx was, I think, too dismissive towards them. They, lumpenproletarians, were for him potential traitors, those who in a crucial moment can serve as a popular base for those in power. Marx Roma was here, of course, the 1848 revolution and its aftermath, when precisely the lumpenproletariat was the immediate material support of the coup d'etat of Napoleon the Little, Napoleon III. I think that here things are today getting more complex. First element to add, and my other friend, Adrian Johnston, even establishes here a link with Hegel, who in his not simply conservative, but very refined critique of the English-British new election law in 1831 or went, which expanded electoral base, warns against what Adrian Johnston calls lumpen bourgeoisie. You know, that opposed to lumpen proletarians, those discarded vulgar classes, we are getting more and more a bourgeoisie, which is not even a proper bourgeoisie. Look, now I will say something horrible, but does a person like Trump, Donald, even deserve the title of great bourgeoisie? No, sorry, great bourgeoisie, with all my opposition to them, had a certain, under quotation marks, but nonetheless, creative function of large social organization and so on. No wonder that in the last years of his sanity, not that then he became crazy, but he then became too ill. 21, 22, when after Bolsheviks won civil war, Lenin was extremely, maybe even too much, fascinated by big American corporate bosses who came to visit Soviet Union to make deal. He saw that Bolsheviks need a socialist forum of these large corporate managers. So what I'm saying, I didn't lose my thread, is that today's new oligarchs are, in a sense, lumpen bourgeoisie, because we should be honest with all the exploitation and so on. At some point, big corporate capitalists did incredible things, large industrial organization, even for their own profit. Some kind of a workers' safety. Do you know that, for example, the big example from Germany, the big conservative Otto Bismarck was the first, earlier than England, to establish some kind of a healthcare, retirement, and so on and so on. So the point is that, and I then try to transfer this point also onto sexual difference, that class struggle is not simply we against us. It's a struggle against all those who are somewhere in between. For example, so-called middle classes or other struggles and so on and so on. Without this complex situation where there are never just two agents, but always a third one, or many more third, we don't get antagonism. We get a simple hierarchic opposition. And I think it's the same with sexual difference. Trans people are, for me, precisely this third element which embodies sexual antagonism as such. And this is, just to finish, especially important for me today when we talk about working class. Yes, we should insist on working class for a couple of reasons. The first being that I don't agree with theory of Ernesto Laclau, Chantal Mouffe, and others who simply put working class into the series of other antagonisms as equal. Working class racism, working class struggle, feminist struggle, tolerance struggle, and so on and so on. No, but nonetheless, and here my good friend, I'm honored to meet him, Alvaro Garcia Linera, the ex-vice president on Bolivia, developed it well how the key to the revolution, or successful relatively, transformation of Bolivia was they got it that today working class is not just workers in the old sense of wage workers. I respect your stance here, absolutely. But for example, I'm sorry if I repeat stuff known to many of you. In my country, Slovenia, as your beloved president ex, it's brutal irony, Trump would call it a small shitcoat of a country. In Slovenia, I a couple of times opposed strikes. People go, oh, are you getting a right-winger? No, because in specific Slovene situation, who can afford to strike? Only the already privileged state employees. Those who work in private companies, they don't have a chance to strike. If they organize a strike, the capitalists said, fuck off. We disband your factory, we move elsewhere whatsoever. It's only the relatively privileged state employees, policemen, doctors, judges, and so on. And so I think, to put it in Lenin's terms, that to be able to strike today, it's not a general point, like for precarious workers, those who work for Amazon, blah, 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 trade unions and strike would be a mega important thing. But there are situations when strikes tend to become strikes of what Lenin called workers' aristocracy. because the only effect in Slovenia of some successful strikes was that the already overpaid upper level surgeons and other top paid doctors got even more. So ordinary nurses got less. There were less new instruments bought, and so on and so on. So my point is not only working class, which of course still exists very strongly. It exists in big Western countries, it exists in third world countries, but what about all this gray zone of unpaid and not transparent for the state wage labor, which is even more exploitative? Like, I don't know where you are, but I was told from my friends in California, Mexican immigrants are crucial, their illegal work in harvesting season there and so on, or in personal life, you hire them as gardeners, taking care of your children, blah, blah, blah. And we had to somehow mobilize all this. Here, I'm sorry if I repeat an old point, but if we are addressing a broader public, it's crucial. The crucial point, and here the term working class becomes important, are new forums like, for example, Uber. What's so horrible about Uber is that it blurs in its very structure class tension. Uber, the company, claims we are not capitalists. We just organize a contact between those who offer a service, those who own a car, and those who need a ride.
Yeah.
So, on the one hand, you usually own your own means of production, a car, a computer, whatever. And the ideology is then that we are all capitalists. Just, I don't have it, but I have a factory, fuck you, you have just a car or whatever.
Exactly.
But the idea is we are all small capitalists, and so...
But this is a good point, because this gets at something we want to ask you about. So
yeah.
So Dave, hold on. Let's because we got these two main questions we want to get to. Dave, ask your main one.
So my main question, and we were going to do this last, but we decided, it's so important. We want to see if you will actually just, what you said before we started recording about how you kind of hold back from getting into the theoretical weeds. But that's kind of after just finishing a couple courses on your work, that's where we want to go for a hot minute. And so the question is a question of the ethics of psychoanalysis. When Mikey was doing his
Antigone, so it connects.
When Mikey was doing his introduction to you, what he left out that is in the article he wrote for Underground Theory, where he talks about how useful your concepts is, it's really understanding jouissance and drive, and how if your drive gets hooked into certain things, you get jouissance from those things. That's not pleasure. It's the opposite of pleasure in a sort of sense, right? And so understanding how jouissance functions in the workplace is so important. Drive, though, if we understand correctly, is almost like the enemy of desire. Like drive gets off on undermining whatever it is that you're desiring. And so in the ethics of psychoanalysis, the idea is, Lacan says you should never compromise on your desire. And then the controversial thing that you say, according to Mikey at least, is that there's an inversion of that you say, no, don't compromise on drive. And so for me, my question then, because I've been thinking about this for months, my drive is hooked into.
Can I do one thing just for somebody watching? And Slavoj, I know you don't like us quoting your books, but this is for everybody who's watching. You have this great line from Looking Awry. Let me read it just for context. You said, with regard to this relation between drive and desire, we could perhaps risk a small rectification of the Lacanian maxim of the psychoanalytic ethic, not to cede one's desire. Is not desire as such already a certain yielding, a kind of compromise formation, a metonymic displacement, retreat, a defense against intractable drive? To desire means to give way on the drive. Insofar as we follow Antigone and do not give way on our desire, do we not precisely step out of the domain of desire? Do we not shift from the modality of desire into the modality of pure drive? Looking around page 172. Dave?
And then, so my question then is based in, look, Mikey and I, and a lot of the people at Theory Underground, we didn't really think that we were going to live to the age that we have. We didn't really think that we were going to survive. We've lost a lot of friends on the way to being where we are, to overdose, to other kinds of self-destructive behaviors. Why is it not showing me? Come on, what's going on here? All right, we've lost friends along the way who didn't cede ground relative to their drive. And so, but then for me and for Mikey, part of what gets us through the work week, part of what gets us our drive is hooked into philosophy. It's hooked into theory. It's hooked into, for me, organizing. And so obviously, well, that's good. I think that it's a lot better that it's that than say heroin or, cocaine. But, people who haven't had the opportunity to develop that drive formation, it's sex, drugs, rock and roll. And if you just lean into that, it ends in a destruction, not just of self, but of relationships, of family, and it just causes a lot of heartbreak. And so I just feel like this is a delicate issue. It's a complicated issue. And I kind of just wanted to give you an opportunity to elaborate on your position.
Yeah, how do you, at this point, after all these years of, like you were talking about Antigone with Alenka, and Todd's idea is that an ethics of desire would be like almost a Heideggerian resolute stance on the fact we are always going to lack. We're never going to not be lacking. So it's a kind of embrace of our fundamental lack. But you've gone back to the ethics of psychoanalysis so many times across your main works. Yeah. We just want to know where you're at with it and what you think the ethics of psychoanalysis actually is, and how do we prevent it from just being a kind of affirmation of the worst forms of self-destruction?
It's an excellent question, and in advance, I apologize if I will not fully answer it. First, let me return to the point which I already made. I want to, in what you said, quoting Ted, involves some kind of a primacy of lack. This, for me, if you say just this, comes just a little bit too close to what I often cynically call this poetry of lack, this hysterical formula of whatever you give me, it's not that, it's never that. You always miss the true object. Let's call it metonymy of object, this poetry of lack. At the end, you have to accept the lack and so on and so on. I must emphasize this, just one side of the story. There is the opposite side of the story in Lacan himself, where lack means also getting rid of an excess. The first appearance of antagonism, even at the level of individual psychic development, is an excess. I refer here to Lacan, but also to one who was not a pure Lacanian, but I think he elaborated this point very well, Jean Laplanche, in his volume Essays on Otherness, where he claims that the lack that we experience, it's not primarily our lack, in the sense of I don't know what I really want, because when I get what I want, it's never that. The original lack is the lack of myself as subjectivity. It's what I am for the other. Laplanche's idea is, to put it very simply, already a small baby somehow guesses that others around him, eventual brothers, sisters, uncles, mother, father, have a certain libidinal investment in him, her, I prefer to say it. But it's impenetrable to him what this investment is. What do they see in me? What do they want from me? So the original form of lack is, I don't know what I am as an object for others. And that's the original enigma. Why? This enigma appears precisely as an excess of the other's desire for me. The other wants something from me, but I never can guess, identify what the others see in me. And
So you're combining lack and
this of the unconscious is that because, and that's for Laplanche the primordial form of unconscious, that the other also doesn't know what it wants. That's the beginning of being human. When you see that the lack is not yours, so that you have an impenetrable other. No, the lack is in the other itself. So now this is very abstract, but this would have been my basic formula of ethics of psychoanalysis. Not to betray, not your own lack. Because this poetic proposition, I always lack, I never get it, that's bullshit. That's usual pessimist wisdom. The crucial point is to transpose this lack into the figure of the big other itself. Society, God, or whatever, the lack is there. So I here, returning, I didn't lose the thread, to your question, desire, drive. I oscillate here. I admit it. My first point here is, now I will not just criticize trans ideologies, but as I always refer here to Judith Butler, say something good about them. You know, the problem with excess of jouissance, it's not just that it's always missing, whatever we get, it's not that, but also that we never can get rid of it. As Judith Butler points out nicely, let's say you try to renounce jouissance. You have a certain idea which is unacceptable for you of perverted whatever sexual enjoyment, you renounce it. But then you begin to enjoy the very rituals measures of exclusion. This is the standard.
That's a surplus jouissance, right?
Yeah. So I go to the end here. There is no enjoyment without this surplus enjoyment. Enjoyment as such is a surplus. So to go a step further, the meaning in which I said that desire is also an escape is that in the drive you get caught into this closed loop of jouissance. Now, the desire is a reaction to the deadlock of this closed loop. You see it suffocating, so you say, let's move the object to a beyond. We desire some X, we never get it. In the same way, I also say that drive is an escape from the deadlock of desire. Desire is this desire for the always missing object. The answer of drive is, but what if I really desire this lack itself? If the lack is not simply a lack, but I enjoy this lack itself, and I like repeating this lack. That's how, it's a very detailed point, with how Lacan reached Freud's famous example of for the dad, the child who plays. He doesn't simply want to keep the object. He enjoys, in the full sense of the term, the very disappearing and reappearing of the object. And I think this logic of enjoying the lack and all that, it's crucial to understand all the strange perversities, here I use the term in a strict way, going on in today's politics. We find this in certain forms of cancel culture, where the pleasure in discovering new and new transgressions to be cancelled is obvious. not to mention the right-wing populism, which is full of obscene desires and so on and so on. So these are not just abstract theoretical points. So, but nonetheless, to come back to your point, my ultimate answer, it will not satisfy you now, would have been that there is a parallel between desire and drive. Drive is an excess, desire is a lack. And they are like two sides of the same coin.
Say they have an extimate relation, right?
Yeah. But 2 points to a certain, I call it ontological gap. Gap which cannot be recaptured neither by desire nor by drive. In this sense, I agree with you that we shouldn't. There was a tendency a couple of years ago, which is why when I will take power, I will first send myself to Gulag or a re-education camp. I was at some point years ago tempted by this idea of desire, a compromise, good drive. No, I agree with you. Totalitarianism at its purest has the structure of a drive, of this stupid closed loop of satisfaction. And it's precisely the way you described your friends who lost their way. I think that only people who go to the end into whatever, alcoholism, drugs, and so on, they go to the end in assuming jouissance, and it's self-destructive. The problem that we have today, I don't have time to go into it, is that conservatives in some sense know this. They are aware of this. But they offer as the only solution a return to desire, but desire in this old-fashioned Christian sense, desire as grounded in a prohibition. Unfortunately, even some Lacanians like Pierre Legendre, the lawyer, also Jacqueline Miller, follow this path. They say that if you fully abandon yourself to drive, it's self-destruction. So the formula proposed by Miller is for me a horrible one. So even if social prohibitions, the paternal law and so on, are not true in the sense that they have no true foundation, we have to accept them as necessary. We have to act as if they are true. I find this formula horrible because I think this was already in my surplus enjoyment book, or I forgot. I noticed that, you know, that Miller unknowingly quotes here Kafka, when at the end of the trial, Joseph K. asks the priest, but this means that the law is fake, a lie. The priest's answer is, no, what matters with the law is not that it's true. Of course, it's not true, but that it's necessary. This is, for me, the contemporary form of cynicism. You know it's not true, but you are afraid that if you abandon this appearance, you get lost. Everything disintegrates. So let's stick to it. And I think that I don't have yet a clear answer. I admit always my limitations, where I don't think I found a formula. That the great task of Lacan is precisely to avoid this choice, which is crucial in today's globalized, so-called, falsely so-called permissive.
Avoid the choice of drive or desire.
Avoid the choice of the ethics of drive, whatever it costs, go to the end, which is a suicidal loop.
Well, think about it. So if we let somebody just
of prohibition, like the only enjoyment is you have a prohibition and you transgress it a little bit and so on and so on. I think, just to finish, that Lacan's answer to this is that in the opposition between sacrifice and desire, therefore Lacan not opposed. I will now very briefly, then I let you speak, quote an example which I quoted 4 or 5 times from that Neil Gaiman, you know, when he says what catastrophe is to fall in love. all your daily life is ruined, you're obsessed, but which means that love as unconditional desire beyond the pleasure principle is in itself a sacrifice of your ordinary daily life and so on and so on. You ruin your daily life, but this type of sacrifice for a cause is how I read fidelity, the fidelity to a drive, to desire, not to compromise your desire. So it's not that desire must be controlled by some higher authority. Now you will say, but still, what if my desire is, sorry for the vulgarity, a desire to kill the Jews or to kill the Palestinians or whatever? My answer here is to return to what I already said, the big other. The ethics of desire means do not rely on any figure of the big other to guarantee it. And this figure can have many forms, not just the obvious ideological form, God, divine order. It can be a naturalist form, natural laws, blah, blah, blah. It can be, or any conservative form. There are many forms of inventing, of relying on the big other. Even the Marxists, for example, the idea of historical progress inscribed into history. This is the permanent metaphorics, not yet of Lenin, but of traditional Stalinist Marxism. We are just instruments of the historical will or whatever, and so on and so on. So again, ethics of psychoanalysis imposes fidelity to your desire, but a desire which is not sustained by any coherent figure of the big other, which somehow serves as the ultimate reference. It is true. And a revolution, I think, that's why I like to quote, I always forget, it is Robespierre, no, I think it's Saint-Just, who says, no, revolution is not a process where you follow a higher necessity. You remember that wonderful metaphor I quote often where Saint-Just says revolutionaries are like passengers or captains of a ship in the middle of wide stormy sea without any compass, where you have to find your way, make risks, and so on and so on. That's our
and that's
situation
the position of
today.
the ethics of desire right there, is the
Yes,
rely on a compass.
Precisely. You don't
to accept that the compass itself is lacking, right? That's the
and can't guarantee you anything.
Wait a minute. But now this doesn't mean any kind of stupid pure contingency, like it doesn't matter, blah blah.
What
blah.
What about a serial killer? Like a serial killer who says, "This is what I desire. I don't care about the big other. I don't care about morality. This is what I desire, so I'm going to act on it." Like, what do you say? Because I've seen people make this criticism of the ethics of psychoanalysis. Is basically the ethical hero then becomes the worst of the serial killer that just doesn't care about social norms, doesn't care about the law, doesn't care about morality, simply acts on their desire, doesn't compromise it in any way, shape, or form. Like, what would you say to somebody who makes the serial killer counterpoint to you on the ethics of desire?
I would say that if you analyze first a serial killer, that all serial killers that I've studied, and I did some, follow the logic of perversion. Perversion means you assume the position of the instrument of another's desire. This desire can even be the desire of the victim itself. You never, a serial killer acts as an instrument, even if this is an instrument of peace. Usually there are very few feminine or trans, not that I know. So let's say a man, he experiences himself as obsessed by a kind of a deeper urge in himself, I unconditionally had to do it. This is not what I mean by not relying on each other, on the big other, because for me, the lack of big other means that, and here I am still a Hegelian Kantian, but in a way acceptable totally for Marx. You know, radical ethics allows for no excuse. You cannot say what a serial killer would have been compelled to say sooner or later, which is that, okay, I know I'm breaking all the moral rules, blah, blah, but I feel this urge in me. Sorry, no, you are radically responsible for what you are. This is, when this Freud said this, for Freud, unconscious is not, oh my God, there is something in me more than myself, I cannot do it. Lacan himself says already in the early 50s that for a psychoanalyst, even a psychotic is free in the formal sense of responsible for what he is doing. Now you will say, but nonetheless, how can you then be in love, blah, blah? Ah, that's the beauty, the last key for me to the ethics of desire. For psychoanalysis, and here the link to what you mentioned, Kant, Schelling, and so on is obvious. The most radical freedom is the freedom that we experience as an inner necessity. Like, sorry, my old example, you, I'm sure, know it. Some of our listeners, I hope, don't know it. When you fall passionately in love, you never make the choice to fall in love. All of a sudden, you experience yourself as being in love. And this always comes after the fact. It's never, oh my God, now I want to fall in love. The moment to do this, but nonetheless, although you experience this as a deeper necessity, your fate, you are fully responsible for it. Kant and Schelling made wonderfully this point, that the highest form of freedom is experienced as an inner necessity. And I think this even holds for political, ethical freedom. When, pathetic example, your political cause, country, but I don't like to mention country because I'm not a key patriot, but let's say country should be defended because it's brutally attacked. It's not that you make a choice, symmetric choice. You simply feel that, sorry for this keep patetics, you cannot look yourself into a mirror in the morning without getting engaged. And that's the truth.
Dave, you want to say something? You got something?
Yeah. So really quick here, I think that's enough to, we'll be thinking about that one for the next year here, and then maybe we'll follow up.
Don't think too much. Fuck you. Don't think too much. No,
But
you know,
we do want to get to a couple other questions, Slavoj.
Yeah, we've got a couple.
But you know what? I almost, with my evil side, wanted to reply to you, and you will exclude me. Don't think about it. Really do it, or something.
Just do it. Just do it.
Bullshit.
Yeah, it just,
please.
We should not read you. We should just read Eckhart Tolle. We'll just be in the present, in the now. All of our problems will go away.
Okay.
But I wanted to highlight for you that we got a camera working. Before we started recording this, we were having trouble showing the in-person audience here in Boise. But this tour we're going through the United States. Every part of it will be, most of the parts of this tour are going to be hybrid. And so I wanted to point out the Boise audience to you. I don't know if you can see it there. Everyone go ahead and wave. Nance, you got to go actually get in the frame.
I see some of you, yeah. I even see a guy from Austin called Lukács. I hope he's not a grandson of the Lukács. I see Castellucci, Marilyn, Lawrence. In my dirty mind, I immediately combine this Marilyn Monroe and Jennifer Lawrence, or who is the famous one there. Sorry, as you can see. But yes, I see many of you, not all of you. Do you see
this one? Do you see this one? Do you see the people? I just pinned it. Everyone go ahead and wave. This is the people here in Boise.
Dave is only the sign of Story Underground.
That's me.
Yeah, well, that's not it. It says Boise audience.
So you are immediate. You, Dave, if I got it, you are immediate embodiment of the big other then.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah. And I have this virtual background behind me, but I am in the same space as the Boise audience
I
here.
like you because my background, unfortunately, is the same one as Marx and the big Signorellis. We pretend to be intellectuals and wanted to impress through some books in the background, you know.
We call these in Liverpool
simply that
we're
it's the
wankers.
only room in. Yes, are they real books, or are you doing this? What some of my professors that are new do? They buy pocket books and then just break the back so that the books look as if they are read. You know.
Yes. Okay. So now the question I want I told you in the email beforehand that there's two questions that Mikey has that the internet is dying to hear. And so the first of those,
fuck them, death drive, let them die. Okay, go.
One of those questions is not going to go up and be public on YouTube. It will not be. It's actually only for the people who are here.
I don't care.
He said we can clip it. He doesn't care.
Mikey, take it away. You get to ask both questions.
Okay.
Go for it.
Slava, yeah, we got two questions here about other thinkers. So the first one, because none of us have ever heard you mention this guy. We want to know do you know who Nick Land is?
No.
You don't know?
So
what about
Nick,
this?
Like Nick, land like land of glory, blah blah.
Yeah. So Nick Land is a British philosopher. And at this point, he's one of the most famous philosophers on the internet. Like, I know you're a meme in some way. Like, there's certain philosophers that catch on with people online. You're one of them. Nick Land is another one. Nick Land's a British philosopher. He's a Deleuzo-Guattarian, and he has the most. I don't even know how to describe his concept of capitalism. Real quick is this: he takes Deleuze and Guattari. He doesn't think he doesn't factor in reterritorialization that much. He thinks capitalism is basically synonymous with deterritorialization. So he thinks capitalism is just going to decode and deterritorialize everything up until the point that it produces artificial intelligence. He thinks that this is going to be a super intelligence and basically like a godlike entity. And it's going to bring about the extinction of the human race. Because he's a Bataillean, he thinks somehow our death is a good thing. And so his theory of capitalism, he basically in the 90s, he was around leftists and he was at Warwick University and he was embraced as a kind of leftist back then. Nowadays, he'd say he never was. But he's basically the most faithful champion of capitalism I've ever seen, even maybe more so than Ayn Rand or anything, but precisely because he thinks it's going to bring about the end of humanity. And he basically got into amphetamines. He had an overdose or he had a psychotic break. He moves to China and now he's like the biggest proponent, spokesman for Shanghai, because he thinks actually Shanghai or the mega city of Shanghai is going to give rise to artificial intelligence. And that's where the singularity is going to emerge. And so he's all for China. He's all for capitalism. He ends up becoming one of the founding figures in the neo-reaction movement with Mencius Moldbug, Curtis Yarvin. So he now has this really strong following online with people on the neo-reactionary right.
Yeah.
And they all love him because they think he loves capitalism so much. And he does, but what they don't get is he loves it because he thinks it's going to produce a God entity that destroys all of us. And so because he's so influential though, and here's the thing, I mean, he hates Lacan, he hates Hegel, he's all about Deleuze and Guattari. And so it's one of those things, everybody's always been curious though, about what you think of him because he's having such a, he had such an impact on the neo-reaction movement. He's also considered the father of accelerationism. I know you're not a fan of accelerationism, but here's the thing for him, acceleration means accelerating capital, turning itself into a God entity that's going to annihilate all of us. And so with all that being said, what do you think of what you just heard?
I think it may sound shocking. I don't want to lose too much time, but I think it's a way too optimist theory.
Really?
You know, optimism for me, optimism is not simply everything will turn out good, well, and so on and so on. Optimism is precisely this stance of seeing a clear line of development, and then there is some point which appear to most of us catastrophic, but for him it's a desired goal, and so on and so on. For theoretical reasons, I think that singularity in this precise sense, I've elaborated this in my book, Hegel in a Wired Brain, singularity in the sense of all of us, single individuals, becoming like collectively flowing in some kind of divine-like mind, that it simply is immanently impossible. That here again, we have a wonderful example of what I was talking about before, the big other. Singularity, in the sense of godlike artificial intelligence, is the latest figure of the big other. And it's interesting that I forgot who, I quote it in one of my books, that there are even some Hegelian thinkers of singularity who claim that, I count them among what I ironically call not yet Hegelians. Those readers of Hegel who think Hegel was in some sense right, but he jumped to his conclusion too early. What Hegel aimed, total reconciliation of subject and substance, of man and God, needs some more time. So even Marx was this in a sense, at least in the reading of young Lukács, History and Class Consciousness. Marx's idea was that not in the spiritual domain, but in the social domain, subject and substance, which means work and capital, will be reconciled only through communist revolution. So Hegel was too early. Then you have, of course, Fukuyama, who thought Hegel was too early. It's only with today's liberal democracy, global capital, that we are there. And then you had, again, artificial intelligence Hegelians, who said what Hegel prophesied as the reconciliation of subject and substance will happen only with singularity, where individual subjectivity will be drowned in, and in this sense, totally reconciled with substance. My first point here is that already at the limited level of artificial intelligence that we know today, why do we presuppose, and just one detour, I follow here even some intelligent, I don't agree with them, but they are not idiots, quantum physicists and quantum cosmologists like the German lady Sabine Vossenfelder, who claims that why do we always imagine artificial intelligence in this transhuman sense as some consistent godlike totality? What if it will be a breathtaking, total, inconsistent mess? It will not be anything divine. But a more important point for me is this one, that I would strictly prohibit here the use of the term God, because here I follow another person whom you mentioned in your letter to me, Heidegger. The thing to learn from Heidegger is that what we imagine as the divine immortal dimension is always rooted in our finitude, which I read in a more materialist way, in our concrete social constellation. there is no God in itself. What we experience as divine is a moment of our concrete historical texture, which means that the moment we become infinite, in the sense of directly participating in godlike entity, we not only lose our humanity, but we lose the divine dimension itself also. We step
But
out into a,
the only thing I'll add is for him, I don't know if divine for Land, he thinks this deity or entity, as he calls it, is more Lovecraftian. It's a pure nightmare. We can't even begin to process it. It's not like anything divine in the way that we would think of Christ or Allah or something as divine. It's a complete Lovecraftian nightmare that we can't begin to process.
I still think that the way he describes it, it's too risky. Because if
he does think it's just going to refine its intelligence and it's almost like surplus intelligence, just more and more. It's just going to get better and better, more consistent.
Okay,
it's going to refine its own algorithms.
Here is, what does he mean by intelligence? Because my basic point in my Hegel and the Wire Brain book is that if there is, and I ask this question many theorists with whom I'm in regular contact, I have my strange connections with quantum physicists, with artificial intelligence theorists. Yeah. And my big question, one of the big questions to them is precisely this one: how that obviously his representation of artificial intelligence is Deleuzian.
It is, yeah, absolutely.
It means
he bases it on desiring production and machinic unconscious.
Yeah, but I think that, again, here my Freudian approach enters. Unconscious is simply a meaningless term without subjectivity. Because for Freud, unconscious is not some basic flux without subject and so on. What Freud calls unconscious is unconscious formations, fantasies, and so on are answers, replies to a certain deadlock which characterizes the rise of the subject. So all these descriptions, infinite flux, no border, no longer human, blah, blah, for me still remain fantasies. Fantasies in the sense of avoiding a certain break. My counter answer would have been, we don't know if this will happen. I don't think it will happen. Why doesn't he draw the conclusion that we are already there?
Well, I'll tell you what, because he has a teleological concept of time. He thinks the future is more real than the present moment is, and that the future is actually, I mean, you're one of the great thinkers of retroactivity, but yeah. He takes it not as a quilting point, we change the past because we re-symbolize it. Yeah. There's something in him, he's taken like a literal physical retro causality, like this thing exists out in the future and it's time traveling or sending influential retro causes back in time to affect. I know, but
now we are coming. I like this very much, to even more fundamental. Let's call them naively. I don't like this term. Metaphysical questions. I remain here a Hegelian materialist. Let me explain this crazy notion. You know, when Hegel says, I quoted this at least 10 times. When Hegel says how philosophy can only grasp a certain Lebensgestalt, figure of life, social order, when it enters its decline. And I think that I agree with Land. Yes, the representation of human being that is now endangered with artificial intelligence is something disintegrating today. But what he learned projects into the future as this, okay, let's not use godlike, but this infinite abyss, maybe not.
It's entity with a capital E, the entity.
Yeah. I think that this is a strict, again, projection, fantasy formation on the gap in our situation here, which is already here.
Could you say that Deleuze and Guattari even do this at the end of Anti-Oedipus with their image of the new earth, which it's like, oh, we have a form of desire that's not neurotic, it's not based on the signifier law, it's not caught up with any of that.
Exactly. I think that this is why we don't have time to enter it, but this is why I think that Anti-Oedipus is arguably the worst book that they wrote. I much prefer difference and repetition, logic of sense, than maybe their last book is a little bit better, Introduction to Philosophy or what.
What about 1,000 Plateaus?
Sorry?
What do you think of 1,000 Plateaus? Where do you put that?
A little bit better. It's already a little bit better than that lower point of Anti-Oedipus. You know how I would read Deleuze and Guattari, especially Deleuze? In Anti-Oedipus, Oedipus is defined as the agent of territorialization, retotalizing, whatever. But read his own logic of sense, where towards the end, Oedipus is introduced precisely as an unlocatable outcast. Deleuze is, for me, a wonderful example of something that holds for many great thinkers. Their big moment is not at the end. It can be at the beginning, in the middle, or where, for example, as I repeatedly tried to show with Schelling. So what I would say again, but let's not lose time, with Nick Lent.
Well, there's one more point I just want to ask you about. Because, okay, one more thing. So you and Land, even though I don't think you disagreed with each other on this particular event, you both take different positions. And I just wanted to ask you about this real quick. Back in 2011, when the Chinese government banned all fiction depicting time travel, science fiction narratives, etc., you, in Less Than Nothing, talk about how you view it as what China was doing, the Chinese government was doing, is trying to ban its people of thinking of alternate futures. Like it's a kind of ban on the future. Land, though, as a supporter of China, he saw it as banning the past. What the Chinese government didn't want is people fetishizing their feudal past, thinking about the past, because China's actually the driving agent of the future. And so for him, the ban is on the past. For you, the ban is on the future. And I'm just curious about what you would say, thinking about him saying the ban is on the past.
Okay, I'll put it like this. Of course, the Chinese state bureaucracy, their top ideologists like Wang Huning, are not idiots. I respect them very much. I never dismiss Xi, the present leader, as some kind of a crazy old communist. No, he is based on a quite almost, I would say, accurate insight into modern capitalism. His problem is how to retain American productivity, capitalist productivity, without the effect of social decay. Unfortunately, their solution is, but I don't mean this term in a bad sense, a neo-fascist one. The typical neo-fascist solution is if you want modernity without ideological modernization. You want the modern dynamic, you want conservative modernity. Their idea is modernity, but with Confucianism. I think it will not function. But what I would say, controlling the past and so on, is that I see here no big contradiction. My only point is the Hegelian one. There is no future. Every image of future that we I'm more of a pessimist even here. We don't know what will happen. I have many scenarios. What I just don't believe is there will be this one large, let's drop the name God, but artificial intelligence, general flow, and so on and so on. If this happens, then we will not be able to use these terms which we project into it from today's experience. But my basic point would have been that the couple of territorialization and territorialization is not the ultimate point. That again, we are maybe even rejoining the couple of desire and drive. Desire is in its nature, at least apparently, territorializing. No, it moves always beyond.
Yeah.
Drive is territorializing. You
move
in a closed loop and so on and so on. And I think that again, in order for all this space to happen, you have to have a certain radical ontological gap. And that's why I'm looking also into all this topic of quantum physics, void, and so on. Reality, in some sense, doesn't objectively exist. There is a multiplicity of inconsistencies and so on. There is a mesh, a gap, a mega. Even in my new book, I would like, if you don't put it on your web, on the web, but keep it in your inner party circle, I would love to send you the manuscript of my new book, not Freedom.
Oh, that'd be great. I'd
which
love
will
that.
appear in April, called Christian Atheism.
Okay.
It's a provocative title. It's totally materialist. Don't be afraid. I didn't begin to cover God or what. Where my point is, I try to sharpen my debate with Buddhists. My point is that Buddhists have this opposition. Nirvana, it's not the same as what Land dreams about, but this kind of eternal, it's not the proper term, it's not peace, but whatever. Flow of
annihilation,
nothingness.
right?
Yeah. And then, my point is that the true choice is not between these two. My point is always a Hegelian one. Not can we arise from our finite world of desire to the void of nirvana, but the other way around. What went wrong with nirvana that we fall into finite world? And for me, the gap, this is the origin. The origin is a gap. And nirvana is always already a retroactive projection out of this gap. So the same thing would be, I don't have time to go into it, my ultimate answer to Nick Land. It's that it's not we live today as humans and then we will blah, blah, blah. Already as humans today, we are not fully human. That's why I remain faithful to the old structuralist notion of anti-humanism, which means that in the heart of being human, there is a constitutive madness. And this madness, which is not just human madness, which echoes some fundamental ontological disorder depicted, for example, by quantum physics of reality itself. That's the ultimate truth. So I would say I
think we probably need we probably need to let you go here in a sec, but Mikey, you've got the one that you wanted to ask kind of off the record. Just go for it really quick here.
One last question, Slavoj.
Yeah.
So when Dave and I don't
one
know
last question. Tell me the story of your life in 2 hours. Isn't this so liberating, politically correct? The only way for me to be friendly with somebody is to presuppose that in some sense they are evil. You know, you project evil. This is for me the only form of true trust and friendliness. It's not, oh, I know you are good. No, sorry, nobody is good. You know, sorry,
Right,
go
yeah.
on.
Okay. So when Dave and I met you the first time, we were at the 2018 Žižek International Žižek Conference in Athens, Georgia. Athens, Georgia.
Oh my God! Sorry that you didn't approach me, but this
No, we did. We did.
Memories of that one.
But okay. So here's the thing, though. When the thing I mentioned to you was I had plans. Like I wanted to get what you thought about Baudrillard, and so I told you that I had an idea for a book on you and Baudrillard. Well, the last 5 years have been me doing constant research, and the book's going to be out next year. It's happening next year. But what I just wanted to kind of refresh my memory real quick. Didn't you say to me that Baudrillard actually, like he had read Sublime Object and sent word to you that he appreciated your work? Is that, do I remember that correctly? That
yeah, but this is what they call in detective novels second-hand circumstantial evidence.
Okay.
Somebody told me this, and it wasn't even that he read Sublime Object. The one who read Sublime Object and didn't like it was Lyotard.
Oh, okay.
But Baudrillard, it was just at the end, before he died, with these new confusions and contradictions, ecological crisis, and so on. There, I got a message immediately before his death, I think even from his wife, that he liked me and so on.
And see,
but you know, there is nonetheless maybe a difference between him and me. Okay. In a very naive way, and you may feel it already, what I was telling now recently. I think we have to step out of this deconstructive mode. It's very naive what I will say now. Oh, philosophy means readings of how other people read books. And then, you know, in this sense, deconstructing. I think we should begin to risk big ontological projects. How to do this without regressing to some traditional metaphysics? That's the big problem I'm struggling in my last work. So Baudrillard is for me here a little bit too deconstructionist still. And that's what I like about Deleuze. Deleuze is to the end not afraid to simply posit, as in logic of the sense, strong ontological theses, propositions. I think this is what we should do today.
You know, and even in the last books Baudrillard wrote, though, like Lucidity Pact, he seemed to return to metaphysics a little bit, where he's kind of taking this distinction between sign and symbol, or, you know, the code and symbolic exchange, and basically seeing them as almost like metaphysical tendencies. And so I almost see it like a return later on in him, where he warms up to it a bit.
I have nothing. I must now make a confession. I bluff enough. I don't want to bluff too much. That there is a lot of Lyotard that I simply didn't read. So I'm not qualified to make statements here.
But do you have a Baudrillard work that you really did? You like Simulacra and Simulation, or the Mirror of Production? See, with the Mirror of Production, okay.
I'm sorry, please finish.
No, I was just saying, like, at one point, like with Baudrillard in the Mirror of Production, I feel like he's really tapped in to a lot of the stuff that you're always trying to explain to Marxists, like in your book on the Communist Manifesto, which is both you and Baudrillard seem to have realized that just like copying and pasting old Marxist categories that Marx used in his time onto our situation don't work. You can't just take proletariat as Marx understood it, and it just perfectly makes sense of the working class now. You can't just take wages the way Marx understood them and say, oh yes, that's how wages work now. Or the strike, that's how strikes work now. Both you and Baudrillard seem to convey a skepticism, saying these concepts just don't work exactly the same way that they did
No,
for
but my agreement, that one I did read, The Mirror of Production. And my agreement with Baudrillard is even deeper here, in the sense that, if I remember correctly, Baudrillard's point is that Marx, but not only Marx, it's not so much Hegel, it's more maybe Fichte and some others establish this logic of we live in an imaginary world of mirrors, exchange, and so on. And the real productive ground is then some process of production. I think, but I first would be here a little bit more merciful towards Marx. This is a naive reading of Marx, and there are big debates in Marxism about this. Do you know who made this turn critical of Marx? Do you read Kojin Karatani?
Yeah.
I forgot the title of his book, no longer the last one, when he tries to supplement, in very Baudrillardian view, I think, the notion of modes of production with the notion of modes of exchange.
Okay.
So that, again, what orthodox productivist Marxists would dismiss as mirror is the thing itself. And I think that even if we reread Marx in this way, you see that things are not as simple as that. For me, the worst text of Marx is that introduction to the, or foreword to the critique of political economy, where he has these evolutionary stupidities, production develops, and then when it develops up to a certain degree, it no longer fits the old mode of production and so on. No, Marx in his own work doesn't follow this. For example, in Capital, he distinguishes between formal subsumption under capital and then full subsumption. He said that with early artisans, weavers, and so on, the form, material of production, weaving machine, remained the same. They were even privately owned. Capitalist was thus the one who immediately bought the products, and that first it's a formal subsumption at the level of the logic of exchange, then the machines, the concrete material mode of production itself change. So it gets much more concrete. Here at this level, I agree with Baudrillard. Also, I admire very much, it really affected me. Was it Baudrillard I'm sorry, old senile guy, am I confusing him with somebody else? Didn't he visit, it was Korea, south, not north, I think, and then portraying Korea as this kind of a land of the future where people are at the same time.
Not sure if that's him or not, honestly.
Yeah, but it reminds me of his, maybe too pathetic, but nonetheless wonderful. It's a fantasy, but a nice fantasy description of landing in LA, Los Angeles, and landing in hell and all that. These are fantasies, but I think they are, in some sense, fantasies immanent to reality itself.
Yeah, he's getting at, because you always emphasize that, like with an ideological formation, there's always an unconscious fantasy holding it together. And so would you say that maybe when Baudrillard's doing his travel logs, like he was doing America, going across, he's actually tapped into the phantasmatic structure of America, and that's what he's describing?
Yes, and that's very important, because now comes my final point. I think that he was able to do it. Precisely, he was not himself an American. I was never this fake historicist in the sense of you have to be there to really see it, how it is. No, I believe that we can understand Shakespeare today much better than people in Shakespeare's time, and so on and so on. And that, again, to understand what is happening in America, it's better not to be too American. Where are you, in Chicago? Where are you?
I live right in a small suburb, Raytown, Missouri, but I'm right outside of Kansas City, Missouri.
You are there, my God. Yeah, yeah.
Yep. Midwest.
Because do you know, was it? No, it wasn't Kansas City, which is the big gate to the West City.
That's
with
St.
the
Louis.
great- Sorry? Do
St.
you
Louis.
know about the strangest phenomenon in American philosophy, the so-called St. Louis Hegelians?
No.
Some German high school teachers who around 1850 established the first Hegelian school there. It was pretty influential. Even the great pragmatist Charles Sanders Peirce originated from these Hegelian sources, but their idea was this one. Hegel came to his conclusion too quickly. It's not the West, that in the 20th century or already late 19th century, the spirit moved from Western Europe to America. And then even then, they moved further. First, it was East Coast. Now it's moving to St. Louis. And they thought, this is it. And I like this fantasy. First, they were proven immediately empirically wrong because Chicago won over St. Louis soon. But then, you know, you had their followers who claimed, no, they didn't go far enough. It's West Coast. We had this dream, LA, Seattle, that's it. And now you have, I love this, some not only Japanese guys, but even Chinese guys who claim the only way to be truly Hegelian, maybe Nick Land would agree with this, is China. You know, for Hegel, China, Africa is before. China is the beginning of history. Well, it should also end there. It comes full circle around, you know.
So
I mean, these are sorry.
Oh, I know it's getting late for you, and we were about to let the other two speakers here go up, but right before we do that, I had my final question as well, and I thought, you know, I'm just going to ask it because I think the whole internet's dying to know about your relation to Compact, because you are on the board of editors, or you can explain that in a second, but I just wanted to say that we've caught a lot of heat from people who don't know us and don't read us, but they see that we're affiliated with you. They see that we're affiliated, or that Nina Power is in the volume. They see that you two are affiliated with Compact, and so there's like this criticism that we've received that this is a red-brown operation, that this is a reactionary operation, that this is blah blah blah. You know the thing. And so I kind of just wanted to give you a moment to, as we close out, say why it is that project over there at Compact Magazine, why it matters to you. What value is it that you see in that?
Can I give you a surprising, brutal answer? I don't regularly follow Compact. Just I am not even sure where do they really stand. Are they some kind of anti-woke left? Are they more in the middle? Blah blah. What matters to me is that, and that's the desperate situation we are in today, that, for example, did I publish with them that text, some radioactive reflections and so on? No, I published that one with philosophical. It doesn't matter. There are many texts where the only two options for me to publish are Compact or my friend Michael Marder, Philosophical Salon. The censorship is so strong. For example, my last text, it's now published in that Project Syndicate website with a strange title, National Disorder, I don't know what. It's critical, but very respectfully, not anti-Semitic, the final hero is a Jew, but it's critical of some extreme phenomena in Israel today. Absolutely, it was impossible to publish it anywhere in Germany, in United States, and so on. Are people aware how strict the censorship is in these days? So
I don't think they are.
It's not that I looked around and said, okay, let's choose Compact. They invited me. I sent them a text. which no one else wanted, they said yes. That's it for me. And it's a very tragic situation, It's from all sides, from, of course, right-wing side, but also from the woke leftist side and so on. The censorship is getting so incredible that, and with this I will finish immediately, that do you know that some people asked me, they were stupid enough, I warned them, I will not name them, for a letter of recommendation. I did it, but I warned them. I may appear well known, but this may cause you trouble. And afterwards they told me, you were right, we didn't get the job, not in spite of your recommendation, but because of it.
Yeah.
We all they got their spies within that committee, and they learned that precisely somebody said, no, let's not give the job to this guy. He has a letter of support from Slavoj Žižek, that's bad. So, don't underestimate in what a desperate situation I am, in the sense of how difficult this is to reach the public.
And in that sense, I see why you jumped at the opportunity to submit something to us, because depending on how that goes, maybe we can publish something.
I also like you. Just one point that you will like. Theory Underground, I read this with, the famous quote from Virgil Eneida, Acheronta movebo, move the underground. Insofar as the underground is all the unconscious fantasies, things that we know, but we don't know that we know it, that's the crucial thing to do today. We cannot do direct revolution, but the only way to lay the foundation for it is to do what you are doing to move the underground. It's a theoretically correct title.
Thank you, Slavoj. It's been a complete honor to have you. And
don't screw me with this type of bullshit. You should say something.
Hey, fuck off, Slavoj.
Fuck off, Slavoj. We don't give a shit. It doesn't matter. We don't fucking care.
You should say it wasn't totally bad, but you should put a lot of work into it to make it somewhat better. That's the only thing that I accept. Okay.
You've got a better talk in you.
Yeah. Okay. Thanks very much. Bye-bye.
Appreciate you. Thanks, Slavoj.
Bye-bye.
Thank you. Take care.
Yeah. Take care of what? Of my feet. Yeah.
I'm going to do a quick little point of order here for you folks, because
we cannot do direct revolution, but the only way to lay the foundation for it is to do what you are doing to move the underground. It's a theoretically correct title.
Welcome to Theory Underground, a place for workers with earbuds who are tired of the bullshit and just want to get down to it. Big ideas, rigorous thinking, and ultimately liberation from necessity.
Research at Theory Underground focuses on what is most important for understanding our current situation. Theory of the subject, capital, time-energy theory, critical media theory, CMT, and the most essential critiques necessary for understanding why the theory, ideology, and common sense of influencers left to right misses the mark.
Theory Underground is coming to a city near you. Besides a commitment to publishing certain underground theorists and popularizing certain fundamental concepts, we have toured the United States and are touring Europe to promote our ideas, courses, and publications.
you've been reading Underground Theory.
Amazing book. I'm a publisher and an editor. I run and review of books. Literally, it's my living. This is the best edited collection I've ever read.
Okay, picture this scene. America, early 2021. An Amazon warehouse worker arises from the emerging underground theory internet scene to create spaces for untimely topics and concerns that are too often neglected or kept in isolation today. Joined by a revolving cast of underground theorists, academics, and critics, he establishes what will become Theory Underground, a teaching, research, and publishing platform by and for working class intellectuals, autodidacts, and academics who want to do more than they're able to do within the confines of academia. That warehouse worker's name is David McKerracher, and his book Timenergy is his first major contribution to the world of theory. It was recently reprinted with a foreword by none other than Slavoj Žižek.
My Bible, it's an excellent
Who
book.
also contributed to Theory Underground's latest book, a collection of essays called Underground Theory.
What you just heard is an excerpt from the Strange Exiles podcast, episode 23, where Bram from Strange Exiles interviewed me and Mikey. For those who don't know, Mikey is the author of the Dangerous Maybe blog. We are publishing one of his books here shortly at Theory Underground. He's also a lecturer at Theory Underground, and he's someone I've been friends and a collaborator with for over 10 years. But most importantly for you all, he's a fantastic lecturer, and it's a crime that he has to do wage labor right now. One of the long-term goals of Theory Underground has been now for a couple of years to hashtag free Mikey. That is something that I've been really pushing, but first, obviously, I have to get freed myself, so the two of us are able to do this because, as Mikey said, build it and they will come. Well, I tried and I built a website and platform. I had my own app and everything, but it's been really buggy and it's more than one person can handle, and that's, a really good lesson for me. And so for now, what we're doing is moving it to a temporary intermediary platform until we are able to get some more serious funding. And ultimately, we want to be in a place like this, a real brick and mortar digital nomadic mecca where people can come from all over the world. But also, the app was really expensive, and so by quitting it, I am now able to save a lot of money, and with the help of my patrons and the students at Theory Underground, especially the monthly subscribers, I am officially able to quit Amazon and do Theory Underground full time. So thank you so much, everybody. This is one huge step forward. My way of giving back to everybody is by promoting everyone who is at a current tier to the benefits of the tier above them as far as subscribers go, and also rolling out a new lower tier. And so check out the tier subscription setup. And if you're not interested in taking the courses or what's being offered for subscribers and you want to support anyway, check out the Patreon. Finally, just stay tuned for more information on the tour in Europe during the month of May 2024 and the conference in Mexico during the last weekend of October 2024. If you want to be there, hit me up ASAP. Let's get talking because it's happening very soon. All right, bye-bye.